Hi, this is Taurus McBride with Taurus Tech, and what we are looking at is a website that shows some of the penalties that some buildings are going to have to pay for Local Law 97. Now, Local Law 97, for those who are unfamiliar with it, if you've ever walked past a building and saw a letter grade like that on the building, that was from Local Law 87. Local Law 87 said that you had to benchmark your building's energy consumption. And then Local Law 97 says that any building over 25,000 square feet is going to be fined based upon how much they exceed a certain threshold for greenhouse gas emissions. So this is tons of CO2. So this is saying that they are allowed 71,000 tons. But actually, the threshold they're allowed is 58,000 tons. But if they exceed that, they have to pay a penalty based upon how much they exceeded. So this looks like about 13,000 tons exceeded. And then based upon that, they're going to have to pay $3.5 million starting this year. And then by 2030, it's going to be $13 million. But that $13.5 million check that NYU may, and I say may because maybe they've taken some steps to try to reduce their emissions this year. So it may be more, it may be less, but every year between now and 2030, that number is going to go up at least 20%, according to what I know. So they could be spending 3.5 million this year, 4.5 million, 5.5. It just keeps going up, up, and up and up. Now, this is also showing based upon the utility inputs that they put in when they did their benchmarking, how much they're spending in terms of their utility costs. So this is saying NYU is spending roughly $19.5 million a year. And then once you factor in that fine, then it's going to be $23 million per year. So why is it so high? Well, this is saying they have 4 million square feet for the campus. Then you have another 1.8 million for the same multifamily housing. It's probably dorms and things like that. Then residences. So NYU is a pretty big landholder in New York. This is how much their utility input is. And if you want to see what they are getting penalized for, if I take this 11 right here and I make that a 5, you see what just happened? It got rid of the penalty. Why did it get rid of the penalty? Because what you're really being penalized for is gas. Local Law 97 is essentially a way that New York City is trying to force people to install heat pumps. And they're starting with the buildings over 25,000 square feet. And before you say, well, NYU has 6 million square feet of space, of course they're going to get fined heavily. Well, let's look here. This is 111 8th Ave, which is the Google complex on 9th Avenue or 8th Avenue in Manhattan. So they don't have 6 million square feet, and their utility cost is $14 million higher than NYU's. Why is that? That is because they have a data center. So when you think about things like telecommunication and banking, like we all use the internet all the time, and now you have AI, and AI is utilizing a lot of energy, both for the servers, the computer servers, but then also for the HVAC. So Google's electrical consumption is, this looks like 4 times, at least four, almost 5 times greater than NYU's is. So they're getting penalized because they're using a lot. Let's see here. So even if they brought down their electrical consumption, right, that only cut the penalty in half, right? NYU has something else going on. It's not the gas, it's the steam. Look here. So the steam is playing a role, the gas is playing a role, but then also their heavy electrical consumption is playing a role. Right? So it all adds up. Now, I'm not making this video to have anybody shed any tears for NYU or Google. They can afford their fines. The purpose of this video is to talk about buildings like this. So this is 142 South Ninth Street, and that's this building right here. So this is probably owned by either a family or a small company. Their utility costs are $71,000 a year. Their fines are going to be $18,000 per year, like a third of their costs. So more than 25% of what they're going to be paying this year is just in penalties. You know why? Because they have a natural gas boiler. They have a natural gas boiler and they have a fuel oil boiler. So let's say if I cut that right there, look at that. It just cut that fine in half. If I get rid of, look at that, the natural gas, it got rid of it completely. So this is what people don't understand. Local law 97 is to force buildings to get rid of gas and oil and install heat pumps. Why is this important? Well, if you look here, if NYU can afford to spend over $20 million a year on their utility costs, they can afford to spend millions of dollars installing heat pumps. We don't even have to talk about Google. Google makes tens of billions of dollars per year. They can afford to spend whatever it's going to take in order to get rid of these penalties. Even if they can afford the penalties, it doesn't matter. Like, why would you throw away millions of dollars in fines when you can spend millions of dollars in upgrading your infrastructure? However, the small, you know, family owned building, the small companies that, invested in these buildings decades ago, they are the ones who are really going to get penalized. And it's not just because that they have to spend the money to install the equipment. The big thing that's happening right now is there's a massive shortage of the refrigerant that is being used in the new equipment starting in basically this year. R410A, which is the dominant refrigerant used in the majority of heat pumps, was phased out. So starting at the beginning of next year, you cannot install a heat pump that has R410A inside of it. So why is that important? That is important because there are two types of refrigerants that are going to be used in the majority of new heat pumps. One is called R32, one is called R454B. These are the companies that are using R32. These are the companies that are using R454B. There is a nationwide shortage of R454B, which means that, well, let me show you like this. If you have this building and you want to install a heat pump, because this building, I assure you, I've never stepped foot in it. They have a big giant boiler in the basement. So in order to get rid of these fines, they have to get rid of that boiler, which means they have to provide heat to all of these apartments. How are they going to do that? Well, they're going to have to do heat pumps. How are they going to install heat pumps? They could install the heat pumps on the roof, but if I want to have a heat pump reach to this apartment down here, then I need to drill a hole all through all of these floors to run the refrigerant line down to that particular apartment. That's going to cost a ton of money, and the operational cost for that equipment is going to be very high. And then let's say if that piece of equipment stops working, it might take out the heating or air conditioning for everybody on this entire floor. This is the reason why I started the indoor heat pump project because I've trained, and it's not a lie, thousands of people who run buildings. I have been training people in building engineering for the last 21 years. I have thousands of students who are building supers, building engineers, resident managers, property managers, whatever word you want to use. And I saw this coming because Local Law 97 was passed in 2019. And I try to put out the word to everybody, you have to do something. And now we're in a position where the big players like Google and NYU, they are not going to sit back. They are going to cannibalize. And it's not just those two. I'm not pointing the finger at those guys, but the big players are going to cannibalize what is available in terms of equipment and refrigerant. And it's going to leave the small multifamily building owners, small commercial building owners, they're going to be left paying these fines because they're not going to be able to get the equipment or they're not able going to be able to afford what it's going to cost to install.